Hello, everyone. We are back, and today I'm here to answer one of your biggest questions with a solo episode. So I think it's very timely because it's the beginning of the year, and a lot of you are thinking about goals such as reaching out to galleries, trying to get in more wholesale store or sell your work wholesale to stores, work with interior designers, and all of those things require outreach. And in my opinion, they require outreach with a portfolio. So today we're going to talk about building an art portfolio specifically for gallery representation, but I will touch on some of those other things I mentioned before. Generally, portfolios are somewhat similar with a few tweaks depending on who you're sending it to, but we're going to dive into it today. So, your art portfolio is your golden ticket to gallery representation. But I think the biggest question is, what does it need to include and what are galleries really looking for? I'm really excited because as a gallery owner myself, I have received so many different types of portfolios and lack thereof. And I really have some strong opinions on what I personally and professionally look for, but also what's worked for me as an artist myself. So we are definitely going to dive into that today. And by the end of this, hopefully you have some great ideas of how to edit, improve, or create your own portfolio. So, first, let's just briefly touch on the importance of a professional portfolio. So, what is a portfolio? I think when I first heard this, I thought back to my AP art days back in high school, and I thought it was one of those like giant folders that you carry around with all your art in. And, when I had to submit my artwork to the AP board, I had to physically mail in my artwork in a quote unquote portfolio. That is not what this is. We are in the digital age. I run a gallery. Do not mail me your art unless you want me to keep it. If it's really beautiful, maybe I'll hang it on my wall. Just kidding. Please don't mail me your art. I do not have any more space for it. But what an art portfolio is in this digital age is basically a PDF document, basically a document that you can send out that showcases your talent, your style, and what you're doing as an artist. How the portfolio serves you is that when you are ready to reach out to anyone, but we're going to specifically highlight galleries today, it is your resume of sorts. A lot of the times I asked artists to kind of send me their resumes, and it's not a traditional sense. Generally, that means, when I say a resume for an artist, I just mean what have you done? Where are you represented? Shows have you done? It's a different form of resume. But what your portfolio is it's an easy way for galleries to see exactly who you are and exactly what you want to show with them. So, unlike a resume where you're listing all your, every job you've ever had, your GPA, all that good stuff, this is like a really tailored cover letter saying, this is exactly why I want to work with you and why you should want to work with me in a visual form. So it serves as kind of your brand statement. So it includes all of your artwork, what you want to present to the gallery, what you think, style wise they would like to show. And then it also hopefully is branded really well and kind of shows who you are as an artist. So let's talk about key elements of a strong portfolio. First and foremost, the artwork. You have to have strong artwork selection. So I think one of the biggest questions I get asked from a lot of artists is, should I show the breadth of my work and include everything I've ever done? Or should I really narrow my focus and showcase a series? So I personally think you want to showcase a series that you believe will be a good fit for that particular gallery. So you need to do your research. What is the gallery like? What type of artists do they represent? What do they seem to be selling? Like if they have a website, which they probably do, it's 2025, go to their website, see what's marked as sold out, not just what are they selling. It's a great kind of extra research hack. Look at the price points, look at other artists they represent, stalk those artists, see how long they've been in business, and then look at your work and determine, will my framed paper pieces do bigger? Will my larger, oversized abstracts do better? You really can get a feel for what might work best with this gallery. Now, if that feels really intimidating to you and you're like, oh, but Hayley, I have so many things that are really good and I want them to know that they can take any of it. No, Yes, I'm sure you do, but this is your foot in the door. So you want to come across as professional, and you appear so much more professional if you tell them this is what I think is best for your audience based on X, Y, and Z. Now, what I recommend is when you email this to them, which we'll get to in a little bit, you want to include this is the in that email, this is the series I personally think is best for your gallery based on, XYZ, but I invite you to check out my website. Maybe you link specifically to a portfolio page on your website, or you link to your Instagram. I highly recommend both, or whichever platform you're most, prevalent on, and say, here's where you can see the full breadth of my work. And that invites them, if they are initially interested based on that portfolio, it invites them to explore more, which they will. If they're interested in working with you, they're not just going to take the portfolio at face value. So that's how I recommend it because it makes you look more professional. It looks like you've done this before. If you're sending me five different styles, one, it makes you look, as I mentioned, less professional. And two, I'm like, okay, do you want me to represent all of these? This feels a little disjointed. You want to present yourself with, you know, cohesive pieces. How many? It just depends on how you set up your portfolio. I generally think around like eight. Um, and I recommend a mixture of photos of really clear, just straight on photos of the work. But also, if you have any photos of the work in spaces, I think that also kind of psychologically serves as a credibility booster because it showcases, oh, she sold this work before. It's in a home. I don't recommend using those apps that places artwork in homes in your portfolio. People can see those really quickly. I don't think they're bad to use on things like social media and stuff, but definitely not necessary in a portfolio. I actually would really highly advise against it. I would just, if you don't have photos of your work in spaces, you can either style it in your own home or in a friend's home. I do that all the time, or you can just do straight on shots, and that's completely fine. So I definitely recommend having a consistent style, medium of what you put forth. And then I do recommend using professional photos, even if they're not done by a professional, just they're well lit, they look really good, they're not so edited that everything is overexposed or the colors aren't correct, and just avoid anything that might be distracting. I think if you have any photos actually from professional photographers, obviously those, are professional, those tend to be the best. So I do recommend, obviously using those because I think a great photo can really make you look amazing. I give this example a lot. You can have a crappy website, but if you have incredible photos, you look professional. You can have a, thousands of dollars spent built website, but if you have bad photos, it doesn't look good. Really, the same thing goes for a portfolio. Good photos can make all of the difference. So you really want to focus on that. And specifically when it comes to photography, we'll get to how we create this portfolio. I recommend creating a PDF in Canva, or if you're, proficient in something like InDesign, that's totally fine too. Use what you're comfortable with, what you have. Canva's just free and a lot of people know how to use it. But make sure when you download this PDF, you don't have a huge file. A mistake I see is a lot of people put these really high res photos in their PDF. It's kind of a sidebar, but it is important, and then they just download the whole PDF and it's this humongous document because it has all those photos in there. I don't need to get too technical, but that's basically what's happening. What I recommend is just making sure you can go into Adobe, I believe, and do it online, but look up a PDF compressor. You just don't want it to be such a huge file that you have to send it like through Google or anything weird like their Dropbox because it's just so big. Like that doesn't make sense. The point is to make this easy to open. People don't want to click more things than they have to. Make this as easy as possible for the gallery. So that's just a sidebar to keep in mind. Also, as I continue to go through the key elements of a strong portfolio, if there is any indication on a gallery's website that they have a specific way they would like you to apply, follow those instructions. Like ignore everything I'm saying, follow their instructions. But a lot of galleries don't have that. And so, like, I know I don't have a specific, like, you have to apply a certain way right now. Maybe I'll add that to my site later. But for any galleries that don't have it, this is how you kind of blind outreach, which is going to be the majority of galleries. I just want you to know that if they do have something, obviously follow their instructions. So, continuing on, professional photos don't have a huge file. You do want to include some kind of artist statement slash bio slash CV. So, what I would recommend is, I think in a compelling artist statement, it can be short, concise. It doesn't need to be super long, but it just gives a little bit of an indication into who you are, what you create, and why it matters to the gallery. Because at the end of the day, this should be a symbiotic relationship. You are giving the gallery likely 40, 50%. I think for an in-person gallery, like expect to give 50%. Sidebar, don't expect to give more than that. Like do not accept more, like them taking more than that. But if they're going to take half, you want them holding up your end of the deal. And that's, for a whole other episode, things to think about. And I've talked about it on this podcast before. But when going into this, I would recommend giving them information that they can then market. So if they do want to work with you, obviously you'll talk more than this one email and they'll get to know you more than just this portfolio. But this is your selling point. This is your time to say, whether it be in an artist statement slash bio, which I can touch on the difference between those. Just what's interesting. Why should they care? Are you local to the area? Does your family live here? Like even little things like that can just be an extra selling point for a gallery. So quickly to touch on the difference between an artist statement and a bio, I personally think of an artist statement as the short little write-up about what you create, why it matters, specifically about that collection or your process. And I think of a bio as more about you, including key information like education, exhibitions, where you live, like kind of those personal touches. It's a little more just like a biography in general. And then what a CV is slash, resume, I touched on this a little bit earlier. It's just, again, exhibitions you've done, shows you've been in, galleries that represent you. I don't think you need to include that unless you have a long list, in which case, include it, extra credibility. We love that. So how I recommend setting this up is creating your portfolio. Like I mentioned, Canva's super easy, but you can use another platform if you're more comfortable with it. And I would start with a page that is, your artist statement slash bio slash whatever you want to include there, and maybe a photo of you with the artwork, something like that. And then truly just a few pages, however much space you need, because you don't want the pictures to be absolutely tiny. You want them to be able to see the work. So maybe 2 to 3 pages just of the artwork itself. Maybe you include under the images, title, description, size, etc. Anything that you feel like is relevant. And then potentially price as well. Design it however fits your branding. Make it, go with the flow of your website, your Instagram. Like this document being branded well, only enhances your chances of getting picked. So definitely consider that. And then just kind of other things. I do think optional extras, like I would say this potentially goes more for designers, but you could include testimonials. Like if you're reaching out to designers, include other designers you've worked with who've, spoken highly of you. But if you've ever worked with a gallery, I know I've written a testimonial for an artist before who worked with me and just said how fantastic she was to work with. You could include that. You could also include, press features if you have anything like that. You also can potentially include your pricing, either, as I mentioned, under the pieces or, have like a pricing list. I think that's more relevant to put into something like if you're applying to stores or you're applying to designers. It's not necessarily required for galleries, but it can be helpful. So you potentially can include it. That's a little bit more up to you, but galleries are going to want to know your prices at some point. So you do want to make sure your pricing is aligned with the other artists that are on their website. I mean, on their website slash in their gallery. And that's pricing is a whole other conversation, but definitely something to keep in mind. Also, just a side tip, your pricing needs to be consistent across the board. Just because a gallery takes 50% doesn't mean you can charge X% more with them. Your pricing needs to be consistent. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox, but I had to share that. Now let's get into how to actually approach galleries once you've built your portfolio. So first, you need to research the galleries that are a good fit. I have a lot of ways to do this. We talk about it in the club. I've potentially referenced it on Substack. I'm not sure. I believe I have a YouTube video on it as well, which might be just in the club. I'm not sure. But you got to research your galleries. Make sure they're a right fit. And then you want to personalize your pitch. So what I recommend is having a template for a short email that you'll send, and then you'll obviously attach this portfolio. But you do want to personalize it every time. I cannot tell you the amount of copy and paste emails I get the amount of my name spelled wrong, my name not included, the scouted studio like called something else. I'm not going to work with you if you don't pay attention to detail. And it's not that my feelings are hurt, but if you can't spell the name of the gallery right, no, I'm not going to work with you. You didn't take any time with this. You should at least know that it's called the Scouted Studio, not the Scout Guide or something like that. So definitely recommend that. Keep your submission concise. This is coming from me. I'm busy. I'm a gallery owner. I have a lot going on. I'm recording podcasts, I'm running the club, but most galleries owners have a lot going on. They don't want to read your whole life story, 15 paragraphs in an email. Keep it short, 1 to 2 paragraphs. That is the purpose of this PDF attachment portfolio, is so that's where they can go to learn more. You don't need to have it all, laid out in the email. Link to your website, include links in that email. Like you can link to your about page to learn more about you. You can link to your portfolio page to see more work. Like whatever you're referencing, instead of feeling like you have to be really long-winded in talking about it, just link to it. And just understand that they might not get back to you. It's totally a timing game. It's a numbers game, honestly. Like I have so many talented artists reach out to me, but I'm one person. I like to personally know every artist I work with. I can't take everyone just because that's the way it is. So you do have to understand that, one, they might not see your message. So we'll talk about when to follow up. And two, it might just not be a good fit at the right time. So I recommend having some kind of Excel document where you track who you reached out to and when, and if they asked for follow-up or if they didn't respond, because that will help you to keep track of if you need to follow up with people or, just what they say in general. Like, oh, reach back in 6 months. That's when we have our call for art. Like you need to be tracking all of that. I do recommend following up with professionalism. I also recommend being patient, but with that, I would say, if they don't get back to you at all, I think you can respond maybe in a month and just be like, did you see my message? If they respond to you and say now's not a great time, I would say reevaluate every like 6 months to a year. Because if now is not a good time, you need enough time to, one, for it to be a good time, but two, for you to potentially come at them with a different style, with a different body of work. Like you might not be at the point as an artist where you need to be yet. And for example, for me, I have had a lot of artists that have applied and it hasn't been the right time, or maybe their style wasn't developed enough initially. And then they've reached out, 1, 2, maybe even 3 more times. And then they got in and now they're some of the best artists in my, in my sphere. So definitely important to just make sure that you're patient and you understand that. Quickly want to touch on a few common mistakes I see to avoid. And I've touched on some of these already, but first, just overloading with too long of an email, overloading your PDF with too many pieces. Like I don't need to see the same exact piece 1,000 times, in different sizes. Like just give me an idea. 8 pieces is probably sufficient, maybe even less. I think 8's good. We'll go with that. And I don't want inconsistent styles because that, again, is just going to make you look a little bit less professional. And obviously, there's nuance to all of this. This is a podcast. I'm speaking to hundreds of people right now, so I'm going to have to speak broadly. But, if you're in the club or you want to sign up for a coaching call, we can actually build your art portfolio and we can talk through the little details of things that might apply to you. So if you're listening to this and, you are interested, just let me know. But I think for the most part, this is the advice I would give. Common mistake to avoid, number 2, just using poor quality images. I touched on this, like, don't send me a blurry image. Don't send me a terribly edited image. Don't send me a poorly lit image. I hate dark images. That's just like my pet peeve. And I get it. Taking photos is hard. Maybe that, I need to do a Substack on that or something, but because I slowly have gotten better over the years, both with my camera and with just my iPhone. You can totally get by with just an iPhone, but just don't use poor quality images. Proofread. We have ChatGPT now. It's free. Run your text through it. Just proofread it. Make sure your grammar's right. Make sure you spelled things right. It's a great thing. That email is a great thing to just run through ChatGPT, have it double check it. And then, don't avoid missing opportunities. And what I mean by that is a ton of people reach out and they're like, I want to work with Scouted Studio. And I'm like, well, I posted yesterday that I have a call for art for the Emerging Artist Show. And I'm not judging people for missing that because I know people, maybe aren't on my email list or missed it Instagram. Totally understand. But in that phase of researching galleries, do your research and see if they already have times when they're potentially doing calls for art. Something like an emerging artist show or like some kind of show that's open to artists, not just in the fold of being full time with them, is honestly the best time to apply. That's your foot in the door. That's the way to prove yourself. So, highly recommend doing that research ahead of time. So, I hope this helps you to just I hope it clarifies how to build an art portfolio. And when you are building your art portfolio, please reference this. Will be on YouTube, but also obviously this podcast. I have lots of blog posts on this as well on the artcoachingclub.com. And I believe I have some examples you can find on one of the blogs. So you'll see that. You can see more examples. I probably need to update that, but it's an older blog, but they're still totally relevant. And just a couple of, like a real life example. I've had artists who I've wanted to work with almost because their portfolio is so good. So let me explain that. If you apply, and I'm not judging artists that have done this because you might not have known, but if you apply and you just send me, you know, a email and it has all these attachments and their images, like my pet peeve is when an image is so big it takes up the whole email. I'm like, what am I looking at? I don't love that. Sorry. But it is my pet peeve, so I'm gonna share it so you don't do it. But when I get all of that, and then next to them is an artist who has maybe they only have 50 followers on Instagram, and this other person has 5,000. If you only have, let's say, 50 followers, I'm not a huge Instagram follower person. I do take it into consideration because it shows how long you've been doing this. But if you only have 50 followers, but you have a incredible portfolio, you have, it's well branded, you have a well-designed website, and you just have bomb, amazing, incredible art, I want to work with you. One, because I'm getting in early potentially before other galleries snatch you up. Um, Not that it's always competition, but there's that. But then also, I trust you. I see that you're taking this seriously. You seem very professional. You seem organized. You took the time into sending this email to me. That, psychologically makes me think you're going to take the time into putting this much energy into everything you do when working with me. And I want to work with people like that. And there's truly been artists where if it comes down to it, I mean, especially like the when I only have the bandwidth as one person to take on so many artists, I'm going to choose the person that appears more organized. Also, obviously I take art into consideration, but let's say two artists are on the table and their art is, in my eyes, equally appealing to my audience. I'm going to choose the person that has a better portfolio. And I maybe you don't like hearing that, but it's true. If the art's even, I'm going to choose the person that's more organized because I believe they're going to be easier to work with. And that's my first taste of you. That's all I know is this one email you've sent. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind. So let's round out with some actionable takeaways. One, sign up for that free Canva account. I would guess that 95% of you already have it. Two, create a normal piece of paper sized PDF document and start dropping in those quality images and your statement/bio and create that wonderfully branded PDF portfolio. Three, download it so that it is a reasonable size. And the way I would test this is just attach to an email and like send it to yourself or send it to your, partner or your mom, whoever, and make sure that it sends like easily, it goes through, they can open it. It's not like, just make sure it all works. Then write a great email. You can pull it from a template and then personalize it. Highly recommend and send it off. I guess I forgot to say research the galleries, but theoretically you've already done that. So do all of those things and you'll be in a great place. And I want all of you to just really get into a lot of galleries this year. I want all of you as artists to thrive, and I think you will with these super simple tips. So I hope this little mini podcast video masterclass is really helpful for all of you that are thinking about spending the beginning of the year just perfecting your portfolio. I think the beginning of the year / the end of the year is a great time to do this. I also recommend reflecting and reviewing your portfolio every 6 months or so, because that's kind of how often I feel like, at least for me, like I'm creating new work and things like that. Maybe it's more often for you. It's just whenever you're feeling the need to reach out to people. But it's a great time to do that. It's a great time to reach out. Galleries are all gung ho, at least I am, like thinking about what the year is going to look like ahead. So I hope this is helpful. If you need extra help, as I mentioned before, we talk about this a lot in the club. So if you have questions about the club, you want to join the wait list, you want to learn more, feel free to email me or message me on social media. And if you want to create your own art portfolio and really build a portfolio together, I am here for you. We can do a one-on-one call. It probably would only take 30 minutes to an hour max. And then we can do a follow-up call to perfect it, to write that email, or we can just really knock it all out in like an hour-ish. So it does not have to take a long time, but this is something that you can invest in now and it will help you for forever. Theoretically. So I really want to help you all get into more galleries this year. I encourage you to share your questions, your experiences, your comments on social media. At the Art Coaching Club is my Instagram, and I'd love to hear from you. So I will be back next week with another episode. As a reminder, you can listen to this obviously anywhere you get podcasts. That's probably where most of you are, but I also am starting to upload the podcast onto YouTube. So if you ever want to watch, I am trying to improve like video quality and stuff. So it's a learning curve. Can't say it's perfect yet, but I am over there. So if you are a YouTube person, you can watch these over there or even listen to them. And yeah, subscribe to my channel. It is also the Art Coaching Club. I have shorts. I have actually a lot of things. I think if those of you, you know, for those of you that are on YouTube, if you like it, I have a lot of content on there that I think you would enjoy. So highly recommend subscribing. And I'm planning on potentially doing more of that this year. We'll see. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll be back next week. I have a lot of really exciting, sorry, I'm just rambling now, but it's important. I have a lot of really exciting Substacks coming out. So definitely recommend subscribing. It's free. And then if you pay, you get some extra great bonuses. And I have some really great people coming on the podcast. So I have a ton of artists that I think a lot of you will be excited hearing about. I reached out to a lot of those people on my recent Instagram when you tagged people who you thought should be on it. I've reached out to a lot of those people. Also, some people outside of just the traditional artist world. So think gallery owners, think art consultant type people, potentially going to reach out to some more interior designers this year. So excited to have all of that lined up. But I do want to mix in a couple more solo episodes this year because I think these really in-depth overviews, like what I just did today, from what I've heard from all of you, are really helpful. Obviously, I will never get rid of the artist interviews because I know you love them, but just let me know. If you liked this episode, please consider leaving a rating and review. It helps me to grow and continue to get great people on this podcast and for more people to find me. So I'll be back next week and I will talk to you then.